The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Kelly Olson. We are back. New York Mets in the zone. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And my co-hosts are Marty Rose.
Hey, Ralph. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good. Excellent. Thank you.
Good. And I'm hoping Robert Cole is just as excellent.
Yes, I am, Ralph. Thank you.
Good. I'm pretty excellent, as Marty knows and Robert knows now. 16 months of blood, sweat, and tears resulted in my publishing a book that I co-wrote with George Grimm, great New York Ranger and hockey writer in general. A book called Comfortably Zoned in a Vat of Pine Tar with Ralph Tyko and George Grimm. Pretty happy about it, and wanted to cavil a little bit about the section on the New York Mets. And I know Marty has read it. What surprised you? What did you like? What was interesting? Marty Rose.
Well, it's all interesting, Ralph. You know, every player that you speak to on the shows has got great stories, and you know they just come out and talk to you like they've known you for years, like you're a friend, you know, and they just go on about really interesting things that have happened that people would not normally think about or know about. And you know, they know the players by name. They know, you know, what they did, how good they were, but some of the things that they come up with are really interesting and a lot of fun to read.
Well, I attribute much of that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. But what I attribute a lot of that to is the unlimited amount of time in a podcast. So the interviews are done with the idea that it could go long as it's interesting. So, and if it does, remember the interviews, and this is 500 pages, are only gleamed from 50 of the podcasts that I did over the past 6 years. So we had a lot to edit to get down to the good stuff. And I would venture to say that some of it was a crapshoot. You can't keep everything in, but you can't leave certain things out.
Well, the best stuff made the cut, you know. Let's put it that way, you know?
Well, maybe the best stuff will be in book number 2.
One never knows.
Well, right? I'm a late bloomer, but I could be an early bloomer in a future life. So if that sounds a little esoteric, I have very little on my mind to think about these days. Retirement is good. So,
Ralph, something that we need to bring up too that a lot of people don't know is that you were a Topps representative on the West Coast for many years.
Right, and that gave me two things. It gave me a comfort around players and coaches and managers. In this case, Charlie Fox gave me some very, very great interview time on camera as well. So I'm just thumbing through the book. I got the book for the first time in the mail yesterday, not even in the mail. My friend Susan, who ordered the book, brought it over and realized she has no interest in baseball whatsoever. So she was nice enough to give me the book so that I could have it in my hand. First time, and I've been thumbing through it all day. It really is well put together. And I will take all the credit in the world for the interviews, but how to make a book, that's George Grimm.
Right. Sure.
And so I gladly share everything, all the credit, share all the credit with him. And as you notice, Marty, you're in the book.
Yeah.
And based on the original podcasters that I had, Peter Trunk is listed. David Hubler, Hal Bach, George Case III, Ronnie Rabinovich. I've had a rich group of podcasters, including you guys, to be proud of. So for that, I thank you. And your response to the book was terrific because, as we've talked about, when writing it, my basic demographics were you and George Grimm. You're a fanatical baseball fan, and George Grimm is a hockey fan first.
Mm-hmm.
So as we went along, if I was keeping him interested, that was my weekly goal. And I checked in with him. In other words, and he'd go, oh, yeah, I learned this, that, and the other thing. Wow. Because he's even as a more than just a casual baseball fan, sports fan of all kinds. But he was impressed. And your response was incredible, Mert. So very well appreciated. You're my gauge. And why is that, for the listening audience that doesn't know? We were in the second grade together, Mert and I. And
we were when we were little. We were close. We were at each other's houses playing games and listening to records and all kinds of things, and bike riding together and. As kids,
we went to the Y together in Flushing, which was a hell of a bike ride from Jackson Heights for 10-year-old kids. And when we didn't take a bike, I don't think we took a bike, but we took a bus. At 10 years old, our parents, the day was different in the 1950s.
So the Flushing Y, right? Yeah.
Flushing Y. And we sang on the corner. Well, you sang, and I
Yeah, we did.
And we had a good upbringing. A lot of the book has a Jackson Heights flavor that me and Wayne create a little bit. If one was going to be a sports fan, one would want to be a sports fan when they literally had 40 kids of your own age group to argue with, debate, if they wanted.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time on the corner talking sports, waiting for the daily news to come in.
Yeah.
And them's were the days. So let me talk, if you will, what about the Mets section stood out? What players stood out to you?
Well, I mean, you had Lenny Randall, and you had I loved the story about the Tom Seaver story. That was one of my favorites with the relief pitcher from Connecticut. I'm blanking on his name. I'm sorry.
Skip Lockwood.
Skip Lockwood. Yeah.
Skip Lockwood. Yeah. I mean, that's such a great story. I mean, I just, the part about Seaver would pick him up in his Porsche, and they would outrun the Connecticut State Police, running down to the Bronx, to the Whitestone Bridge and stuff. I mean, and then of course, the one day that he doesn't show up. I mean, you just had. We all felt that, though. That part when he said Seaver didn't show up that day. I mean, we all felt that day when he got traded. It was like we died. I mean, it was terrible. It's one of the worst days ever. Especially as a Met fan, it was just unbelievable.
As a New York City fan, it really took the heart out of the city that was going through so much at that time. It really was on the downhill anyway. And but from a Met standpoint, story was delightful. Lockwood had to drive his own Ford. He's used to being picked up by Seaver in a Porsche, and he had to drive his Ford into the game. Skip is a delightful guy. He wrote a book of his own.
He did, right.
And title of which escapes me right now. I'm so self-absorbed. When is that going to stop?
There's quite a few books on that. Shamsky's book was good, too. About the 69 season and those guys that went to visit Tom Seaver at his vineyard in California. That was a terrific book.
Had he been masked, he would probably be alive today. And there were so many Hall of Famers that we lost through this pandemic. I venture to say that all of them weren't vaccinated and or taking good care of themselves in terms of social distancing and avoiding this stuff because it wasn't the mindset of many. Robert, tell me what your reaction was when Tom Seaver got traded, where you were, how you felt.
I remember sitting there listening to the game on the radio, and they kept talking about there was going to be news after the game. And sitting there by the radio and listening to all the stuff afterwards. And it was just dreadful. It was just like almost to the point where, you didn't want to be a Mets fan. It was just a horrible night. I mean
Thursday.
There were several trades. Dave Kingman got traded that night as well.
That Kingman, if treated properly, would have been a 500 home run guy. No, he was as talented as anything. I remember watching him at Candlestick Park in 1971 when he was with the Giants the year of the Fox. And he was so speedy. He was such a good athlete. Pitcher in college as well, would go from first to third as fast. He could get up that elongated stride of his, faster than anyone. He was going from, like I say, from first to third, and really helping the Giants, because that was a great year. And I think I mentioned that in the book a little bit too. That wasn't the year of the Fox. That was the year of the Fox. And Chris Spire from Alameda here in Alameda, and Tito Fuentes made up the double play combination. And Spire was a rookie, and Fox was told by Stoneham that if he doesn't make it, he's your choice, but if he doesn't make it, it's your job. So I remember Fox telling me that story of the 71 Giants. Willie was still with them, Bobby Bonds, Henderson, damn good team. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk about the 2021 New York Mets, such as they are. But you know, I saw a posting where before the Yankees played, it wasn't a posting, it was the Yankee announcer was talking about how the Mets, how losing 2 out of 3 to the Mets, and he said, who were a damn good team except for the injuries, and that were playing good ball when they ran into the Yankees. What could have been, and why did they die these past 2 weeks? Start with you, Robert. That's my question.
Well, one of the big reasons is that they're running out of gas. I mean, their pitching staff is pretty much done. Okay, you know, they keep running out. Guys, day after day after day. The bullpen really has nothing left, other than Luke, who is amazing. I mean, he's very consistent. But Tyler McGill should be shut down, because they're going to ruin him for next year. He's way above the amount of innings he's ever pitched before. And,
right.
And they're not hitting. They haven't hit all year. As Marty said yesterday, finally Dom Smith and McNeil get big hits when it doesn't count anymore. And that was absolutely true.
That and frustrating, especially McNeil. Going in, he was a major cog. As far as I'm concerned, if it hadn't been for Nemo taking the place of McNeil, getting a lot of hits, getting on base, working the counts like McNeil used to do, this season would have been a disaster right from the start.
Well, don't forget too, Ralph, you mentioned the last 2 weeks. Nimmo was out those 2 weeks.
Good.
The Mets,
That's right.
The Mets had started making some inroads the previous couple of weeks. I was calling it the miracle. The miracle's still going. And then Nimmo got hurt, and all of a sudden the miracle stopped. And that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and as far as McNeil, I'm just wondering how he is mentally affected by Baez being there. Like that second base was his spot for the last couple of years. And now, he's out in left field. I mean, he's halfway decent out there. He's not terrible. But, it's not his position. And he's been pretty lousy, and I think he could be on the trading block. He's got some value because he's not a free agent till 25, so he could go. And, you know, and Dom Smith, we just talked about him. He probably would be more valuable next year if they bring in the DH to the National League, which that's got to go through the negotiations with the Players Association and everything. But everybody seems to think
it's apt to happen.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah, everybody seems to think it's going to happen. So.
Yeah, if I was a betting man, I would bet that it is going to happen.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well,
as far as the pitching, you know, we can talk about the pitching. You know, like right now, if DeGrom is okay, and that's a big if. If DeGrom is okay, which you think he would be by next year, they got DeGrom, Peterson, McGill, Carrasco, and Walker. They already got 5 starters. I think Peterson started to show something before he got hurt. I believe he was pitching pretty well. So they'll still have to decide what to do with Syndergaard. And you know, if they sign him or they give him the qualifying offer, they could start off right away with 6 starters next year, even without bringing back Stroman. So
hey, we could thank God they didn't go for Bauer.
Oh yeah, really, unbelievable.
I mean, I remember there was talk about that, and that could happen. You're a Dodger fan, Robert. What's the story on him? Is he ever going to play for the Dodgers again? Pitch for the Dodgers?
I would think not. The rest of the team doesn't want him. I mean, the rest of the team is very, very pissed off at him. And, you know, I mean, if he was brought back, I guess they would take him back, but they really don't want to. That may be a contract that they have to eat. We still don't know, you know, what the legal ramifications are going to be either. So
that could void the contract with baseball.
Could, yes. But there's a lot of back and forth of, you know, whether or not everything is as it was laid out, and so who knows? I mean, that'll go all winter long.
Okay.
You want to talk about free agents?
I do.
Okay. Where do you want to start? we got a few. Conforto?
Let's go around the horn.
Okay.
You start, Mert.
Okay. Well,
who would you like?
Well, from what I've seen, I think they should re-sign or try to sign Baez, but I don't know what he's asking for. That's the question. You know, how much you're willing to give, how many years, I don't know. But I think they should definitely try to keep Baez. Conforto, I don't know. I mean, he's been playing better lately, but early in the season he was really bad, terrible. So, you know, what's the real Conforto? How much is he asking for? I don't know.
Now, how much of it is coaching? They fired Chili Davis, a bigger name coach, at the beginning of the year when they were doing horribly. And as you mentioned, Conforto got caught up in that. Sometimes the team dynamics, one guy gets hot, another guy gets hot. That becomes hard to pitch to a team. But that didn't happen. We didn't get much of a boost by the new coach.
No.
Is Sandy going to bring in, they were talking about Billy Beane and Epstein, not Epstein, Bob Melvin.
Somebody's going to be brought in, Ralph, to run the whole baseball operation. That's a definite. It's a definite. It's just a matter of which one of those guys it's going to be, because they said Alderson is just going to be like a figurehead president, and that's it. They need a younger guy to run the whole baseball operation, and they're going to get it, but they better do it quickly before big decisions have to be made.
Yeah, that's the very first thing that's got to be done. Is who's going to run the operation? That brings up another thing that I've been thinking about, and I run it by you guys. When Cohen, bought the team, and he had to be approved, did Major League Baseball force him to take Sandy Alderson on as part of the provisions to be approved as the owner?
Well.
Because I harken back to when the new ownership took over the Tampa Bay Rays. They were required, and I forget the guy's name, they had to retain a veteran baseball guy as a consultant and as part of the approval process. And I'm wondering if the same thing was put in place for Cohen.
Well, I'll give you another example of that. The San Francisco Giants in the 70s went bankrupt, and baseball forced them to put a baseball man, Spec Richardson, in.
Right.
And so there's precedent for that wouldn't surprise me.
In fact, Sandy Alderson was mandated to the Mets, if you remember. Major League Baseball basically told the Wilpons they had to bring Alderson in because they were upset with the way the team was being run.
Mm-hmm.
He went downhill. His decisions have shown me that he's gone downhill for the last year or two, especially about HR stuff. There's been a ton of craziness that's just good old boy way of running a team, an organization, a league. It's slowly turning, but not fast enough. And he got caught up in that. Callaway and a whole bunch of bad decisions. But I don't think Callaway came to light until later. Am I correct?
Well, Callaway wasn't his hire either.
Okay.
Callaway was hired by the previous administration as the manager.
Okay. And we know what that we beget from that administration.
Right.
It was horrible. So, but let me make a comment on Baez. His play in the last 2 weeks has been superstar. I haven't seen that in Lindor for more than 2 days in a row. But Baez has looked like a five-tool player with more than a little punch. I like him. I don't know what his head is like. I remember getting a warning from Robert Cole on his clubhouse disposition, and I think Lindor spooked McNeil. They had a tiff, and that couldn't make McNeil feel good. You give a guy $35 million or $1 trillion, and this guy's a double play, a second baseman who hasn't gotten his big payday yet. That sucked. But in a sense, in the long term, Baez and Lindor, whether he comes back to full force or not, they've got him signed indefinitely. They could be a force. Alonso at first, Nemo in center. I think they have the basis. And if you don't decide to go with Conforto, I'm sure there were a lot of free agents, guys who are out there. Somebody else's problem right now, which is the way it always is. But I like McNeil. I thought I liked him for his versatility, and he played hard. And this has been a disastrous season for him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see him come back. So,
if you bring Baez back, where would you play McNeil that he's particularly productive? He's not a power hitter.
Left field. He's a decent left fielder. If he was going to play left field all the time, I think he would become an even better fielder. But then you have the flip side. He could become a Ben Zobrist type, where he can play first, second, third, corner outfield, So there's always a spot for somebody like that.
You can see why the Cubs won. They had a guy like him, and they had Bryant as well, who's very, very flexible and valuable. And so you got to give a guy a role, and if you give him the left field job, what are we talking about? Villar, for instance.
Well, Villar and Pilar are both free agents at the end of this year. So I don't know what they plan on doing with either one of those guys.
Well, they had a habit of collecting a lot of good ball players before the injuries, and they had some depth, at least at one time. I can see Villar I like. Or is it Pilar I like? Or is it me that I like?
Or maybe it's Dougie Flynn.
I liked him. Not as much as me.
You know what I heard today? That somebody was saying if Robinson Cano decides to play winter ball, he should play third base. Somebody mentioned that today.
Whoa.
So, yeah. So I'm just saying. I read that today. So
yeah, that's something to think about.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it next week, guys. Hope it's a better turnaround. We had a win yesterday, and too late with too little. How about that?
Yeah, well, we got a couple of fun games at Boston, and then Milwaukee probably will be a disaster. They're playing great. Milwaukee is like the unknown this year, and they're playing great. Nobody pays attention to them. I don't know why,
right.
but they're definitely a very good ball club.
Yeah,
Midwest press. It's not like New York, California. And the fans aren't that way, too. It's a big difference. And
yeah.
For sure.
No,
but the Mets are still going to have a say in the pennant race, though. Don't forget. Okay.
Right.
Because if Philadelphia stays within 3 games of Atlanta, and they're only 2 behind Atlanta right now, and the Mets go into Atlanta for 3 games, the Mets are going to have a say in the pennant race.
Good point. That'll be something to listen for. Continued recovery, Howie Rose. I miss him on the Mets broadcast.
Yeah, well, he's doing fine. He's on Twitter, and he does tweet things every once in a while. So he's doing okay.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Thank you, guys. Another good show. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Co-hosts are Robert Cole and Marty Rose. We had fun. Hope you did too. And thanks for listening. Adios and happy trails.
Good night.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.